Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Friday, February 17th, starting rather late today. I guess I have some slight excuses. I was up early at like 6 to 9, even like 9 in the morning, and recorded a solo episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! And then my neighbor at some point got solar panels installed, and now this is like the second time that they've had to have more people on it for like the entire day. And it is right on the other side of my bedroom, so I'm hearing lots of banging even now. And so that became a distraction and became an excuse to go back to sleep, and that's where I am at. I did finish the Descendants or the Descendant, which really feels like it was potentially a Kickstarter game. Apparently they're doing a European Cup exclusive. It says to all duelists across Europe, we're pleased to announce the largest tournament ever in our Challenging Cup event. I'm not in Europe, but apparently I'm not sure if this is really a thing you do in the video game. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's really a thing. Like, see this? It doesn't seem like it's a real world thing, but they also don't seem like they're really explaining how you would enter the tournament if you were even in Europe. So they're not giving the right details at all. Anyways, The Descendant feels like it was a Kickstarter game that claimed it was going to be a Telltale game, claimed it was going to have 5 episodes, maybe even had a publisher that contractually obliged them to have 5 episodes and have QuickTime events like Telltale and dialogue choices that matter like Telltale. None of that is implemented at any high level. You literally spend an hour and 20 minutes per episode kind of wandering around an area looking for items you can only find in a specific order, so you can walk past the table in which the item that you need to collect is and not be able to collect it until you collect 2 or 3 other items before that point. So it really is just a time waster. You will get into long, poorly written cutscenes for the vast majority of your interactions and dialogue that fail really badly at characterizing people and or telling an interesting release story. There are some cool concepts on the surface level of a game that feels a lot like it's an interesting twist on something like a post-apocalyptic Fallout game, and potentially even having a second-class / racism allegory, but they don't hit the second-class citizen racism allegory well enough because there's just not enough interaction and characterization of people in the first place. In particular, they run into the problem of the main character needing to be written as a neutral character so that the player can inject their own personality into the main character, which then really only leaves maybe 2 or maybe 3 other characters in the whole story. And you're playing as 2 main characters with flashbacks, flash forwards. It's all just a nightmare. Let's see what we can do here. This was the ultra rare secret packs. Let's go ahead and do this. Unless there's something else you could do with this, which Doesn't seem like there is. Okay, so you just straight up told you can't select the other ones. So, and I guess they're just not going to do the shuffle animation at all. Which, okay, cool enough. We have one new pickup card, one new non-pickup card in the selection pack. And then if this is the exact same kind of pack, then you would have been guaranteed one ultra rare in one of those 8 cards, but it's not even that. It's literally just a pack that gives you an ultra rare, which inherently is going to push you down to checking out this secret pack that you unlocked. And then, even though I've made decent progress on getting almost all the secret pack cards, or at least one copy of all the secret pack cards, there still would be a decent argument if I had an infinite amount of gems to open more of these secret pack cards now. And I'm doing the solo mode to try to get more crystals so I can do this 3000. This one free pull pack of these cards seem to be a thing. And it's free, so there's no reason you wouldn't take it as an anniversary thing. But you can definitely see how Konami here is just trying to get the last small percentage of people who never have opened a pack on Master Duel to get into the experience of opening a pack in Master Duel. You might have thought that they would have potentially even opened up a better opening animation or a new opening animation at this 1 year anniversary to try and spice that up. And then we could look at these 2 other secret packs that we again can't really afford. This would be a very good candidate of a secret pack to open. Now, 1 pack at 100 or 10 pack at 1000 if you wanted to open more of these. And I don't see a real reason why you would do that. The other new secret pack is here. Let's see how good of a candidate this would have been. Not really a very good candidate at all. But we have like 1 more free pack. I could see people missing these free packs because it doesn't seem like they're being quite as pushed. But 1 pack is at least 9 packs short of what you need to do. Like, if you can't open at least 10 packs, you might as well not open any packs at all. All this is going to do is possibly give you a couple of cards that you haven't collected, maybe 4. But none of these are marked as new. And then maybe you'll get something out of the Master Duel 7000 card pool. But even in getting this ultra rare here, noticeably I didn't even get a key from that to unlock yet another secret pack. So does that leave us with anything else? I think we've purchased everything else except for that 3000 gold thing. Everything else that we could potentially purchase. And they have changed how secret packs are kind of working now, in that I have 38 days potentially to come back and get some more cards from this secret pack, and that would be helpful. And we can just go ahead and skip opening the legacy packs in favor of just jumping into the game. Meanwhile, we're at ranked gold 4. I did fill out that survey, by the way, at the end of last stream, and complained as much as I could. So, Legend Anthology held. So if I select a deck here and just picked Zodiac Tri-Brigade, almost every card is banished. We'll look at Flawander. Almost every card is banished. Legend Anthology. I guess the event info would probably explain this. Remember memories of fierce battles in the past, follow the footsteps of the legends to discover new strategies. Doesn't really show a banned list though, or even mention a banned. This event will feature event-exclusive regulations for cards and archetypes used by legendary duelists such as Dark Magician, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Red Eyes Black Dragon. So inherently you have to play as one of these loner decks or you're going to fail fairly quickly. So Blue Eyes, let's just start with that. Evolving Blue Eyes. And I have wondered if there's just any way you could make your own deck at all based on those regulations, or you could only make very slight variations on these loner decks, and very possibly they just don't have a way to program it to only have loner decks. I guess we want to go to 5,500 medals. Ideally, you would want to go the whole route. It does also feel like there's an overlap in timing here. Yeah. 3 days from now, this XYZ festival also starts. So they are really expecting you to just play a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yep. The Descendant as a game, I've started and stopped talking about it like 3 times now. Real disappointment, though. And if anything, it just kind of highlights why it's probably better that there weren't more companies that tried to make Telltale games. Telltale Games inherently had licensing that made their games, or at least the Walking Dead games, more interesting. And the Batman Telltale games and a couple of their other series. And The Descendant is not licensed on anything as far as I can tell. So anybody copying Telltale on that aspect would have been defeated. Telltale had a staff that had a little bit more experience, whereas The Descendant feels like it may have been the first game from that company. And it's far too ambitious if that is the case. And it definitely didn't have the writers that they were hiring, that Telltale was hiring. But also, because it was licensed games, you already kind of knew the feel and theme and type of story. Inherently, Telltale games are about characterization and people and the decisions you make. In The Descendants, it really isn't about that at all. So, yeah. I was fairly disappointed on that. And then I decided after that I would play Prey. Because that's yet another game that has a character in a spacesuit, and I'm just kind of going down a theme of let's play different types of games where you have a character that's in a spacesuit. Although in the case of Prey, I don't know if you're really wearing a helmet that often, but even in The Descendants you weren't wearing a helmet after the first episode, so whatever. Uh, the weirdness around that is, as I actually did accomplish scheduling a couple of things, I'm approaching October, and probably just for legacy stupid reasons, I'm still going to try and do a Halloween month and have a kind of spooky horror game in the one game that I'm pre-recording and airing. I'm trying to line that up. So playing Prey now is going to potentially make footage that would release out of order from the other games like the Swapper, the Descendant, and the Fall, which that's fine. I'll just make sure to not make too much reference to that fact when I record the footage and then put the footage out. The thing that I'm definitely thinking, though, yeah, I didn't have a Blue Eyes White Dragon, so much for that. I literally don't have any card that I can play. This is a Blue Eyes card. This is a Blue Eyes Jet Dragon. But you need a Blue Eyes White Dragon. So each word needed to synergize. Yeah, I am starting to think about getting back to 2 pre-recorded footage. It's probably going to happen. If now we are in February, March or April of next year. And honestly, I still probably would fall behind at that point. Because inherently, I'm just not making the same amount of momentum. And unless I just try to make a ton of episodes that are shorter and stretch out how long something airs, which that didn't really work either, it doesn't feel natural to play a game, a 60-hour game in 30-minute increments. Hour to 2-hour chunks are much more realistic. But yeah, the amount of games I've been playing has not increased, and I just don't see anything changing that. The amount I'm sleeping is still crazy high and crazy inconsistent. Just getting old, basically. The desire's there, certainly, but the amount of time and energy isn't. But at some point I do need to play a kid's game, and I don't know how I'm going to pull that off unless I just straight up decide to put a Lego game in as the only pre-recorded footage I'm going to play, or a kid's game of some sort as the only kind of pre-recorded footage I'm going to play for a month. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to talk about. Is I finished The Descendant and I did 1 episode of a solo mode. I'm going to try and do 2, if not 3 or 4 episodes of the solo modes of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. That way I have as many crystals as possible for this anniversary event, because you can sometimes get 100 or 200 crystals. Let's see. Let's steal their Blue Eyes White Dragon. Apparently I can't steal the Blue Eyes White Dragon. I don't know why. Can't be normal summoned. Or set must be special summoned from your hand by revealing Blue Eyes White Dragon. So this isn't This is Blue Eye's alternative white dragon. Oh, I see. Well, that sucks. So yeah, let's start going through the news. I guess I didn't fully cover this, but the Pokemon trading card game apparently is having a tournament. OCIC, whatever that is. So it's Pokemon Championships Oceania, Day 2, and they're streaming this. If people are interested in that, I probably should. It's video game adjacent, although technically not a video game itself. But I guess I should mention it. Intervision Software released their game, or is releasing their game in early access called The Last Starship, and they did a very interesting poll here as far as which store you're most likely to buy it from. And you can see of 965 votes, 87.5% of them said Steam. Only 4.2% said they would have bought it directly from Introversion's own website. And then 6.2% said they were going to buy it from Good Old Games, and 2.1% said they'd buy it from Humble Games, which I guess is kind of the Humble Bundle without the Humble Bundle part. Which just really goes to show that Steam has almost a complete monopoly on the marketplace as far as the preferred place to buy PC games. And inherently, it's not hard to really see why. Steam could have a ton of improvements to it, and a lot more features, certainly. But there are just no benefits to buy an individual game from an individual publisher's website at all. Like, you just wouldn't even think about putting your credit card in some random game company's website. If you really, really were anti-Steam, but somehow still didn't have any problems with Good Old Games or Humble Bundle, which have both had their controversies, although Steam has certainly probably had more, then I could see maybe going with Good Old Games. But yeah, the Humble Bundle in particular and Humble Games had lost a lot of its fandom, and Good Old Games was Humble Games lost a lot of fandom when they started adding mandatory amounts of the amount you were putting towards the Humble Bundle to the actual website, whereas before you could say, I want 100% of the money to go to a charity. And inherently it felt like the whole idea of the Humble Bundle was that it was a website that was a not-for-profit website that had income from some other sources, and they could just allow people to donate 100% of the price that you're willing to pay for a Humble Bundle towards the specific charity, and give none to Humble Bundle's website and give none to the publisher, which is always how I did it. Like, if I am giving to a charity, even though I'm not getting a tax write-off because I'm still receiving a video game or an item of value in exchange, I definitely would want it to go to the cause, not to the publishers or the website, that's the middleman. And once Humble Bundle or Humble Games said, no, we have to get our cut no matter what, it stopped feeling as generous. Good Old Games was CD Projekt Red, and so they have had some controversies, I believe, too. So there's definitely nobody that's clean, except for maybe Intro version's own website. But it doesn't even, most people probably don't even make decisions like that. They look at their Steam library and say, I have hundreds if not thousands of games on my Steam library. Why in the world would I purchase a game that wouldn't show up automatically in that Steam library? And forget that I even own it, potentially buy it a second time. Let's just switch over to a different loaner deck. We didn't get very far with the first one. And with that kind of market domination, it just does not seem like Steam would ever get shut down, or Introversion's website could change, Good Old Games, Humble Games websites could change, and then you couldn't re-download the game, potentially 10 years from now or longer. Even if Valve and Steam were found to be a monopoly and had to be split up, you would almost certainly see that Steam as a service and a website would stay together as one package, and you would see then Valve having to spin off their ownership of Steam and become just a video game development company or just a hardware company. I could see an argument made if you were going to start breaking up big companies in which Valve was split between Steam, Valve Hardware, and Valve Game Development, and then you would have an incredibly small, unprofitable game development company and an incredibly small, probably not that profitable hardware company. I could even see the argument of the hardware and the Steam store staying together and just the game development company being spun off, which would be a minor loss, certainly. If anything, it might give a kick in the butt to a bunch of encrusted into the system employees at Valve if all of a sudden they literally were working only on Steam and could not pretend or play at being programmers making video games. Of course, if they were going to go after Steam or Valve and break them up for being a monopoly, they would almost certainly go after a lot bigger companies first. Let's see. So let's summon this. Let's see what else we can do. Let's see, what Red Eyes? Yeah, I think your best bet is probably throw that in the graveyard. And then maybe do this. And then place this. And then end the turn and just see if this possibly could work for me, which it probably won't. Yeah, immediately you run into this problem once you have these loaner decks in that you're having to figure out new cards, look at new cards, figure out new tricks. Like summoning this. Seems to have done nothing. So, as far as YouTube content creator news, Susan Wojcicki, after 25 years at Google, has stepped down to start a new chapter. It seems to imply, from what I heard, that she's focusing on her family / having a baby, although arguably she might be a little too old to even do that. But she's stepping down as far as being in charge of CEO, or stepping back is what they're calling it. And from what I've heard, the person taking over the position of the CEO, though, is just either arguably worse than Susan Wojcicki, or just more of the same. Like, it would have been incredibly surprising if anybody new would have been put in charge of YouTube, in the sense that just from top to bottom, it's a monoculture. Everybody kind of thinks the same, it feels like, from the outside looking in, and they're all on board with the same dumb, disconnected policies from the creators. There is definitely a lot of dancing on her grave, definitely a lot of people just reiterating their irritants around how YouTube has done things over the time. Yeah. Inherently, we knew that Susan Wojcicki was not really doing much, or at least from the outside looking in, just rubbing elbows with millionaires and celebrities and pretending like those were the actual YouTubers and content creators that she should be talking with and getting a perspective from. Noticeably, she didn't even so far announce a new job somewhere else. So yeah, it feels like she's just been able to live off of Google's teat for so long that she's now saying, well, now I want to do even less work and let somebody else live off of Google's teat. The only real hope is that this new guy replacing her maybe was a bit more into shorts, so maybe he would make one or two major changes to make it easier to monetize for shorts creators, because there is a real insanity around the idea of having to have 1,000 subscribers before you can monetize shorts. And there definitely is an insanity around having potentially 10 million views before you can monetize shorts. It does not really feel like an attractive way to bring people to YouTube shorts if you wanted to start fresh. If you were on TikTok or Instagram and already had a major following, then maybe you could push your audience from those platforms to YouTube shorts, but I'm not sure you really could. And it would be very ironic if I get back into the YouTube Partner Program because of my least effort shorts, but I mean, that's what's been happening recently ever since I started doing shorts, is that I've been getting a lot more subscribers, and yeah, it stupidly is being promoted by the algorithm and working, so what can I do other than say it works? Now, you can always hope, certainly, that the new guy in charge doesn't do anything incredibly negative or surprises everybody and says, oh, actually I had a whole bunch of ideas, but the nature of YouTube was to always just kowtow and bootlick Susan Wojcicki, so now that she's no longer influential, I will implement a whole bunch of new ideas. Although I will say at the current moment, and I doubt this has really anything to do with the new guy being in charge, because I'm pretty sure he hasn't even officially taken over control yet, but who knows? They didn't give a specific date. I guess she said today, so that was February 16th, so it is possible that the new guy was in charge today. But I am noticing, like 3 times now, I've been prompted before streaming, prompted before uploading, to verify my identity on YouTube. Which, I mean, it's not a terrible inconvenience, it's a little inconvenient, but it's almost certainly the right thing to do, considering how I have seen recently at least 2 people get their YouTube channels stolen. This is absolutely like the worst way to have played that. I kind of feel like there's something else I was supposed to do with all of that. And this effect monster for 1200 seems like it's going to somehow defeat a 3800 card. Which that doesn't seem realistic. So yeah, I'm hoping for positive changes, hoping for not negative changes, as it were. Embracer Group announced a bunch of stuff, but they also retweeted this first 4 figures, and they are once again promoting Darksiders with these like giant statue busts. First 4 figures also seems to make, I assume, licensed art for several different games, some of which are older and less relevant than others, I'd say. But yeah, here you can see War, and here you can see a bust of Strife instead of a full like figure of Strife, and then you can see a full figure of Death. Noticeably, Wrath not in this collection, the latest character. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that that is... Why are we playing Morphing Jar? I don't even think Morphing Jar is legal to play, usually. It's very weird that they would be promoting a game that, or games that are old, and that they haven't really, Embracer Group hasn't really treated that well, THQ Nordic hasn't really treated that well. They're still trying to milk it. It would be like if Ubisoft was trying to sell statues today of Altair, the first Assassin's Creed character. Kuribo. Man. And once again, it, like, I have to ask myself, am I being unreasonable here when I have 3 failures? Like, obvious, long failures? Had no chance of succeeding failures? in a row? Am I saying, well, this takes too long to play, or this is too difficult to win, and this is just going to waste my time when I could be playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel in solo mode and at least get victories there and make progress? Even getting level in XP, like a year in, we're at level 31 of 50 levels, and it seems like very slowly I'm creeping up to level 32. But yeah, this is, from my perspective, I should have had a chance to win here. I should have at least made it to a third or fourth turn, which seems like I'm getting defeated on the second turn by people that very possibly have just figured out what better meta decks to play around this. If cards like Morphing Jaw, which are usually banned or unbanned, then there's very possibly a strategy here. Inherently, there's this case too where these early legendary decks were made for the anime, and they would heavily rely on the plot armor of the anime, the heart of the cards joke concept, in which you draw which they draw the exact card they need. Right. Let's do this. Is this a Blue Eyes White Dragon? No, this is Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. See what this effect does. Alright, I think that's about as good as I can do. Yeah, I've been talking for about 45 minutes though, too, and still haven't yet to win. Video Games Chronicle articles. The Epic Games Store's next free title has been announced. Duskers will replace War Pips, which is currently free to download. Ubisoft has added Rainbow Six in the Division mobile games to its 2023-24 lineup. One of the things I'm thinking about doing to my YouTube channel, and this almost certainly would end up being something that would have to happen going forward, is I'm going to try and use a Unicode character for the word number. So it will look like a capital N and then a little O with a letter under, a line under it. Numerous, I guess is what it is. Let's activate this because it's just going to get destroyed anyways. The reason for that is really stupid, in that YouTube assumes when I put a number sign for an episode that I'm putting a hashtag, and that has never really helped me get any more views as far as I can tell. If anything, it seems like the algorithm may be just labeling that as hashtag cheating or spamming, and uh, de-promoting my videos, which is really dumb that I'd have to bend over backwards to use, because using a number sign in a standard way is something that the algorithm seems to be unhappy about. But yeah, so if you start to see me using number in O with a line under the O, that would be the reason. Inherently, that's probably why you see a lot of people This says its name should be Blue Eyes White Dragon now, but this one says it's based on whether or not the original name of the card returned. Blue Eyes White Dragon. So let's activate this. Send this back. And see what we can do with that. Yeah. I'm just like trying everything here. I'm really giving it an effort. I'm not just goofing off. I may be not paying enough attention, certainly, compared to other players who are putting 100% of their attention into this, but like, guess we might be able to pull this off, because if we do a 30-30 here, they'll just do Mirror Force. Which, interestingly, didn't destroy this card. But I've probably lost. Yeah, as for the story, free-to-play mobile games being released in the Rainbow Six and the Division universe does not care. Does not matter to me, so moving on. Ubisoft says it will attend E3 2023 if it happens, which, you know, if anything, I think Ubisoft is probably putting out press releases and announcements in an accelerated fashion just to get people to forget about people being upset with what Yves Guillemot said in the company-wide meeting he had like a month ago or a few weeks ago, where like he upset the French associate level employees when I think he really was addressing the French management level employees, but whatever. If anything, we've already moved to the next controversy because there was a pre-approved question and a Q&A at Activision Blizzard that happened just a couple days ago, and now they're reporting on it. Or maybe it even happened yesterday. I don't know when it actually happened. And they've really pissed off their employees at Activision Blizzard even more than before. So it's just every couple of days, you don't even get a single week without something new happening at Activision Blizzard. And at a certain point, I wonder if it is not intentional, if this isn't just a case where Bobby Kotick, maybe as an evil genius move, has decided to just let the company's employees become irate and quit, instead of potentially firing them and having to pay some severance. And he's decided to just sell the intellectual property to Microsoft, which is, frankly, I think all that Microsoft really would care about. Like, well, Microsoft pretends like it cares about its teams. It has enough teams at the moment, certainly, that it could put new companies or third-party developers in charge of making more Battlefield games, making more World of Warcraft content, Hearthstone content, things like that. All the good talent around Activision Blizzard is, I won't say all, actually, most of the good talent at Activision Blizzard has probably already left. And the only people left are people who are either stuck in their job for some specific unfortunate reason, or are too toxic or too bad of an employee in the first place to find another job somewhere else. But yeah, following that Q&A session, in which I think they canceled bonuses on top of already being an incredibly low-paying company compared to other video game companies in the area. That may have been the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of characters, a lot of people. One thing I was basically asleep when I was, or half asleep when I was listening to it, is the real cost of living to cover your insurance and all of that, particularly in that area, is somewhere around $25 an hour. So plenty of people in the United States not living in California are not getting paid $25 an hour and working 40 hours a week to just make a bare minimum to live. Yay, we got a connection failed victory, which is very possibly the only way I'll get any victories. One of the problems with potentially fixing my internet, which it hasn't given me any trouble so far, is that I'm seeing less of these disconnects. And that jumped me up by 500. But yeah. Inherently, there's, and I will say the end of this sentence is going to end in universal basic income, and so I'll skip most of that to say that there is a stability that is lacking in jobs today compared to jobs of previous generations. Like, for mostly, I would say, white males of previous generations, if you got a job, you were on a very friendly terms with your boss. Your boss was going to try and keep you employed with them forever. He was probably cheating you in some small way, but you would never figure it out or know about it. And it would never not be anywhere close to the amount of just wage theft and cheating and manipulation that happens nowadays in medium-sized to large-sized companies. But there was a level of job security there. You work a job for 30 years. That dream, that concept actually did work because employers were looking for that to happen now in the same way. Particularly in the game world, that's just not the case. Particularly if you're a QA employee, they want you to work for that one game for maybe 3 or 4 years. Then they want to fire you and hire somebody new at a lower amount of pay. They don't want to have to give raises or cost of living raises or just any kind of raises. They don't want to keep people around. They don't see a value in their employees or any consistency in their staff at all. And it's not just QA people, because stack ranking is a thing at Activision Blizzard, and as such it's allowing for the middle management to pretend like they're actually doing something important as they are pushing out some percentage of all their employees every time they do a stack ranking review, regardless of how good the employee is. There always has to be a winner. There always has to be a loser in stack ranking. There always has to be this worship of a aggressively competitive situation. It's a straight up gamble. Toss a coin, give me heads. Yeah, and what does Time Wizard and gambling have to do with Black Eyes, Red Eyes, Black Dragon? And that instant fusion didn't let me actually attack with that character, so I shouldn't have done that. Let's see what this does. So yeah, to wrap up my rant, we need a new system. I would say it's probably it's gonna have to be something called UBI, Universal Basic Income, to just give consistent income to individuals, because consistent employment is not coming back. You look at Amazon.com, they literally are going to run out of humans on the planet. I think this was a good thing. Nope, that was a bad thing. That was a real dumb bad thing. Moving on. I've seen something on YouTube talking about a Tetris movie, and I knew a Tetris movie was technically in development. So apparently they've made like a trailer, unless it's just a fake trailer I've seen. I haven't seen anybody officially talk about it though. And you would have thought that if a trailer had been put out for a Tetris movie, how in the world are you going to make a Tetris movie? No clue. Like, you could definitely make an interesting reenactment based on a true story as far as just like the development and purchasing of Tetris and selling of Tetris. But if it's going to be something like Pixels, where there's giant Tetris blocks floating in the air, that'd be kind of ridiculous. Just like Pixels was ridiculous. Tetris Effect, as an actual game, is getting new modes on all platforms starting next week. Which, yeah, this doesn't even really look like Tetris Effect so much as just playing regular Tetris. Which, you know, a new mode in which you could just play old-fashioned Tetris and Tetris Effect is probably a smart move. PS4 players can also upgrade to the PS5 version for $10 although I don't know if I would really believe that's worth it. These upgrades really should be free, and the fact that PlayStation is not really going for that is kind of ridiculous. I imagine Xbox probably has, on a few games, asked for an upgrade price too, but it definitely seems like PlayStation is much more into that idea. Moving on, Apex Legends and Titanfall leads have formed a new studio called Wildlight Entertainment. The new company includes the reported director of a cancelled Titanfall 3 campaign. If anything, this feels like just another way in which somebody's going to start a new business and tease something that maybe would feel like Titanfall. Interesting. This is new music, it sounds like. We won't have the rights to the name of Titanfall, certainly. So, yeah. If they do make something that feels like Titanfall, that'd be great, but I'm not sure. And inherently we have this problem where Video Games Chronicle, the UK site, is using Giant Bomb's, whatever is left, Giant Bomb's reporter, quote-unquote, Jeff Grubb, as a source, when I have specifically determined to not believe Jeff Grubb because he is flippant with accuracy and the truth and just is not a good reporter as far as getting the details right or caring about getting the details right, and he's shown that to me on several occasions. He's not someone I'd call a straight up liar as much as he will take any bit of rumor told to him by someone else and treat it as fact, and then if he gets something wrong, he doesn't particularly care to put out a retraction or even investigate if he's wrong. He's got his head in the sand as a news reporter, which is just not acceptable. And that certainly is a problem with the internet as it currently is, and particularly the idea of AI searches is only going to make that worse. Is that there's no way to just say, I don't trust this person, or this here's the reasons why you shouldn't trust this person. If the mainstream video game journalist cabal, for lack of a better term, says Jeff Grubb is in and uses him as a source, then he's in and used as a source, which then that pollutes the accuracy of the vast majority of mainstream video game sites that literally just re-report what other people say. Yeah, undoubtedly, whenever these new companies come out, though, is best case scenario they make one game 4 to 8 years later, far past the point where you've forgotten that they even announced their development. Even Second Dinner, which made Marvel Snap, and was Ben Brode from who was the figurehead creator supposedly of Hearthstone. Like they took forever to go from Ben Brode forming Second Dinner to Ben Brode releasing Marvel Snap. They now have not really talked about whatever their second project is. Marvel Snap really isn't that good, and not what you would have expected at all from the maker of Hearthstone. So yeah, they take forever to make their own game, and then they come out with something completely different. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if whatever Wildlight does eventually release, if they even do release a single game as a new studio, they will. Wouldn't be surprised if it's completely different from Apex Legends and Titanfall. Okay, put this up here. And then equip this here, which was dumb. I'm just trying things. Just desperately trying things to adjust from playing poorly. Wow. Man, if I was trying to lose on purpose, I'd be so good at that. Let's see. Video Games Chronicles says Sega is the latest Japanese company to raise employee salaries. The company says annual salaries will be increased by 15% on average. If anything, this I think is an example of just inflation happening in Japan and them already kind of knowing that they can't squeeze the Japanese worker any further. Otherwise the entire economy is just going to collapse. I wouldn't be surprised if deep down into the politics of Japan there's subsidiaries and government influence pushing companies to increase the salaries. Inherently they have that headroom anyways, in which they've been underpaying people. Starting salary for university graduates is being raised from 222,000 yen to 300,000 yen, which goes from $1,632 to $2,225, where that's not really a lot of money when you have a lot of bills to pay and you're living in Tokyo. And it really just goes to show also how Japanese companies are very much sheep, and they will just follow the leader, and as soon as one person raises the price, the other will. Arguably, you might say that is actual competition happening too. This work. Nope. That did not work either. Maybe by the 5th or 6th time I play this deck, I'll actually understand what the cards do. Let's see. Sega says Sonic Frontier sales have greatly exceeded its expectations. Company says player feedback has been positive despite a lower than expected Metacritic score. Yep. I didn't see a lot of YouTubers playing Sonic Frontiers, and I did see complaints of bugginess, but I wonder if the bar is just set so low as far as Sonic fans that they thought the expectations there were low enough. Inherently, Sonic always feels like a game series that is sold to little kids that don't know any better. And the movie certainly would play into that also. I find it questionable that little kids could stay Sonic fans for that long, though, because unless you just never got a Mario game, Mario Odyssey is also sold to little kids, and it is a way better experience than something like Sonic Frontiers is. It would be nice if they were closer competitors, and Sonic Frontiers was Sega's answer to Mario Odyssey, but I don't think it really is anywhere close to that. But yeah, there is always a fandom among Sonic fans that I never really understand. And it's not like I'm such a Nintendo fanboy, as this guy like attacked multiple times to win. I don't even know how he did that. Yeah, I'm not such a Nintendo fanboy like I may have been when I was a kid to want to see Sega fail or Sonic fail. If anything, I want to see Sonic do a lot better and be true competition to Nintendo and Mario properties, at least on some small level. Like, Nintendo would still have Mario Party, Mario Kart, Mario Golf, all those spin-off games that Sega shouldn't even begin to bother to compete with. But if for every Mario Odyssey there was a Sonic Odyssey to compete, that would be good enough. And you can't, with Sonic Frontiers, make the same complaint that you might have made with other Sonic games, in the sense that the concept of other Sonic games is kind of broken, in that by the time you see a character on screen, it's already too late to avoid damage when you're running from left to right in the flat 2D animation. Sonic Frontiers being 3D and having a decent far ahead view prevents that from being as big of a problem. Then you just have to address the next issue with Sonic games as far as is running around collecting rings at a high speed fun, whereas every other collectathon type game you tend to do it at a medium speed at most, if not a slow speed. Arguably, if I was in charge of making a Sonic game, I probably would want to bring it down to like 1,000 rings in total, like, and make them collectible and not something that's just an infinite collection of rings, or like the Lego studs in video games. Of course, you could do the Lego stud thing. Let's do this. And send that to the graveyard. Nope, don't want to do that. Probably a little useless to turn something that's a 3500 into a 4100 when I could have powered up some other things. Let's see. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's next update adds new box features, various bug fixes, but there's still no mention of Pokemon Home integration. I don't know what they mean by box. Pokemon boxes to make them more useful. Like, I don't know what a Pokemon box is. I'd assume it's a box where you put Pokemon into a box to use later. Even in the list of bug features here, it's not a super long list. So yeah, as somebody who's almost certainly never going to play Pokemon Scarlet or Violet, I will just leave it at Video Games Chronicle says new features and bug fixes are coming to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which, yeah, I imagine new features will be coming consistently for a long time. Right. Okay. No, for safety's sake, I should just attack here with that. And then just attack with these two and win. We are making slow progress, I guess, through the battle pass. And I guess if I get lucky enough, I could slowly build this up. I'm at 1,000 now. If I can get to 5,500, that'll get me the crystals I desire. But at a certain level, that almost implies that in the next couple days, I need to only play this game and get everything done before the next XYZ festival unlocks, and that's to say nothing about playing ranked. Moving on, 3 rivals told UK regulators, this is UK, not EU, that Xbox Activision deal would harm competition. 2 others expressed no concerns over the proposed merger. So, like, what were the 3 rivals there? Maybe we don't have names. Nvidia and Google, possibly. Apple and PlayStation. Nvidia, Google, and PlayStation. I wouldn't be surprised were the 3 that said it would harm competition. The 2 others could have been Apple, maybe, and somebody else. Again, this is just dragging out that story to a ridiculous level at this point. Let's see. What would we want to foolishly bury? That, maybe? Let's go ahead and discard. I guess this. I'm not sure that was the right move, but whatever. Video Games Chronicle says days after its last increase, the Saudi Arabia yet again ups its Nintendo stake. The Saudi Arabia Wealth Fund also recently raised its stakes in EA and Take-Two. The real concern here now is that this public interest fund, which now owns 8.26% of Nintendo and is its largest stakeholder, they could literally just get enough interest or enough financial influence over every single publicly traded video game company of note before they do anything to actually use that influence. Yeah, at a certain level, like, that is the danger, and that's not just Saudi Arabia, that's any company. Like, any company, any government, anybody at all could, if you own 99% of all politicians in United States politics, if you're just funding all of them, and you've never done anything other than donate to those politicians' funds to get reelected, and then all of a sudden somebody says something to piss you off and you stop funding that one politician, well, then the other 98% of politicians or funding may just fall in line seeing that example. Like, you can make an incredibly subtle threat or have incredibly subtle influence just by being financially involved. And almost certainly in previous decades, like the United States would have never tolerated, or Japan in particular would never have tolerated foreign companies having any stake or share in their companies. The idea of world trade has opened up a Pandora's box of potential complications as it deeply intertwines political influence and influence in general with economics. And no amount of government correction, short of outright bans, is going to probably remove the amount of influence foreign companies now have on other countries, other companies in other countries. But all I can do at the moment is say there is this boogeyman tale that Saudi Arabia at some point is going to start having direct influence on how video games are made and what kind of content is in video games and what kind of content is not in video games. And then there will be just no pre-existing evidence of that happening. Although the slippery slope argument really just has to be believed, in my opinion, at this point. Like, for decades they were talking for decades Democrats have been saying that Republicans wanted to overturn Roe versus Wade, and it was always looked at by me as, oh yeah, this is something Republicans talk about but never actually put any laws into effect or do anything about it, because it just whips up their voter base and gets them to come to the polls. It's a wedge issue is what that's called, to just drive a wedge between Republican and Democrat voters and whip them up into a fervor. All of that goes out the window, because basically every wedge issue, whether it's Roe versus Wade or most recently censorship and fascism in general, around state laws making it harder for adults to see porn and having to give government state IDs out to websites just to look at porn, which it won't stop at porn. They'll go for porn first, and then it will be you need a state ID to look at any site at all, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and just imagine how many people are not going to be willing to give out a social security number or a driver's license number to get on Facebook or Twitter. Yeah, much more likely and safer to give out your ID to one VPN site and VPN into a different state that doesn't have such restrictive internet censorship. And almost certainly those laws won't last, but they'll last long enough. Because for the internet in particular, that's been an interstate federal thing very much, and states have not been able to successfully limit or change how the internet works inside of their own states that much, but who knows how long that lasts. So yeah, to get back to video games, all I can say is it's a slippery slope to see Saudi Arabia become involved. Like, it may very well be the case that the current crown prince, who doesn't sound like a saint, doesn't actually care to do anything with video game companies and is just using the public interest fund to actually try and enrich his citizens and diversify where the income for his citizens are coming from. assuming that the money in the public interest fund is actually making its way back to the citizens. But what does that matter? The Crown Prince is on the board and in charge now. Somebody else could be in charge later. Yeah. There definitely doesn't seem like there's checks and balances that I've ever heard of. And I doubt there are any checks and balances. What checks and balances could you really even make as a public interest fund in a government agency? If anything, in this late stage capitalism, we are we're seeing too much income, too much money in play in general, and it's just overcomplicating a system that was designed and conceptually logical back in the days of barter. Like, I will trade you a banana for an apple, old barter system, evolving from that to I will trade you an apple for a coin, and then I'll go and use that coin to buy an apple from somebody else. We have gotten miles, light years really, away from that being the real system and the way money works. Moving on, a huge Fire Access shakeup sees XCOM director and studio head exit. The studio lead departs after more than 20 years at the studio. Now, I saw an update here saying that Jake Solomon is still on good terms. But I don't know. 2K says they're on good terms with Jake Solomon and he's looking forward to seeing what he does next. Seems like 2K is shaking things up quite a bit here. In addition, the studio head Steve Martin will also be leaving the company after 25 years. They announced on Friday. So they've gotten rid of a couple of XCOM people. 2K has. After many years. Although after such a long time, yeah, they may be more than happy to move on and do something different anyways. And they're showing Marvel Midnight Suns, which is just XCOM with Marvel characters, which very well means they will never get back to just a standard XCOM game. And that we will just see more and more Marvel Midnight Suns type games, or licensed XCOM type games. In a weird way, though, there's already NIS that makes the several XCOM strategy RPGs, so they're going to have some small competition there from NIS in the Disgaea series, I think is the name of it. On the other hand, I could also make an argument that when you get these announcements that somebody is been let go, let's just call it a layoff or let go or being fired, whatever you want to call it. After 20 years, after 25 years, maybe there is a level there where that's somewhat of a good thing. Increasingly, we are potentially seeing like people stay in their positions too long, which does not really open up room for a new person to get promoted or to go to another position. Once you want to get, like, we have really created a system that unless you are just the lowest level of associate employee trying to move towards second tier associate level 2, it's incredibly unlikely that you will get promoted to middle management or even C-suite management. And let's face it, most of the people who are C-suite managers at best started in middle or upper middle management, if not C-suite, through nepotism in the first place. Nepotism that sent them to Ivy League colleges that then became the justifications to being hired out of college to be at a much higher position than your average state school college student just graduating would get. And certainly people are wanting to work longer and staying healthier longer when they're in the higher positions. So you do get a situation where people leave companies or are kicked out of companies instead of getting promoted. And then they go and form their own companies. And then that's the only way you really do get promoted. So like one of the best things you could potentially do out of college is to potentially make your own company and then call yourself, maybe not the CEO of that company, like do it all well so there's actually some paperwork on it, but like call yourself a general manager, something that sounds like you're a mid-level manager of your new company. So like if you, I wouldn't say paper routes would be a good move, but let's just use that as an example. If you started a paper route company in college, it'd be fairly ridiculous. But if you called yourself a general manager of that distribution company and you used a bunch of buzzwords and hid what it really was, that looks probably a lot better on a resume than just saying nothing at all. And unfortunately, the idea of going to college and just focusing on college is out of the reach of most people. You need to have some kind of employment, and that's why they are getting away with job listings. So it's like, we want 4 years of work history and we want you out of college, straight out of college, just because they were expecting you to work since you were 16. But yeah, you can really help yourself by potentially just starting a small one-person company and making it look like you were in middle management. Don't go too ambitious. Don't call yourself the CEO of things. That'll be fairly obvious. At a certain point, calling yourself a manager or general manager implies that you are managing someone else. So potentially having somebody working under you in a small business wouldn't be a problem either. I guess the new equivalent of a paper route these days would be something like a delivery job or a Uber job. So if you called yourself a general manager of a food delivery service, and you were working for Uber, that might work. Although Uber almost certainly would slap that idea down and disagree with you. But then again, Uber also claims, Uber and DoorDash all claim you're an independent contractor, and at a certain point, if you're an independent contractor, you can claim your own job title for your own part of that business as whatever you want. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit too much today, so this probably needs to be our last game. We made a little bit of progress today, but we also started late. So, yeah. And I'm making some progress through the news, but not enough. Fire axis here, or fur axis. I've always heard it as fire axis, but looking at it spelled out, it looks like fur axis. They've confirmed that a new Sid Meier's Civilization game is in development. I'd have to question whether Sid Meier's even is still around at Fire Axis, or if he ever was around. I don't know if Sid Meier's is even a real person, as much as he may have been a person from a long time ago, or he may have just been a made-up name. It is actually a little surprising that there isn't a fake character. At a certain level, if you told me like Shigeru Miyamoto is just an actor and he is just trotted out to pretend like he programmed video games, I would believe you. I mean, he's not even really programming video games these days. More, he's just kind of an ideas manager. Anyways. Okay, if I'd put this in the monster zone, that would have worked. Okay. I've never been able to have enough time to want to play one of these strategy games, and there's quite a few of them as far as over long periods of time society strategy games, strategy simulator games. I'm not even sure if Civilization per se has you fighting against other competitors that much, but I think it is. I think Civilization is the one where Gandhi was broken and programmed wrong, and then it became a running meme. A mass of 8 crystals being collected, and then a card I almost certainly have 3 copies of. So yeah, we're at 2,400. The goal would be to get to 11,000 if we could, but even 5,500 would be good enough as far as the crystals are concerned. So we did make good progress on that. Of course, then this XYZ festival comes out, and then they want you to do the exact same thing. This time, again, getting to 5,500 for the crystals. If anything, this may just be an interesting A/B test around getting players to decide whether they prefer this special festival over an XYZ standard festival. Alright, well, with special festival rewards going on here, that's going to give me a decent amount of extra rewards. And then as far as daily quests go, I have yet another duel and solo mode, because I got that finished earlier this morning when I was playing in solo mode, and didn't do enough ritual synchro XYZs. This is incredibly too slow though. Like, nobody wants to sit through this whole process. Let's do something and just click and just see if we can speed it up. Yes, we can. So clicking doesn't skip, but it does speed up the process. Lifetime rewards still. quite a few of those going on. That gets me up to 3,500, which does then let me go do this 3,000 purchase. 30 packs, at least 3 super rares guaranteed. And I imagine you cannot buy this multiple times. Of course, the problem here is these are just Master Duel packs. The absolute worst way to potentially try and get new cards. You're just going to have very low odds of getting new cards. And even if you do get new cards, they're going to be out of that pool of 7,000 cards. Meanwhile, anything good you get is going to then unlock a secret pack and push you towards that. So that was maybe 2 super rares we've gotten so far. I don't know if we're going to see a single ultra rare in this whole setup. But yeah. Fairly small numbers as far as news. I did look online to see if there was a strategy maybe I was missing to get gems, and yeah, the first Google search just repeated to me everything I already knew as far as getting gems, and a year into the game that is just really doing the daily quests. Yeah. So there's like no special grindy way to do it. It would be nice if there was a slightly faster grindy way to get gems. Even if it was something as simple as just watching ads. Or playing through a solo mission multiple times over. But in all fairness, if I did have every single card in this game, I would only then just look at like what is a top tier meta deck and build one top tier meta deck and play that one deck and live with that one deck. So that was 10. I don't think it's worth time, since we're trying to rush here, to go through this any further. So let's open this one ultra rare pack for the excitement on that, then let's skip the rest. Inherently, because you can skip, you are fairly certain that everything is already predetermined. As far as whether you get a shiny, as far as whether you get an ultra rare. No input is affecting any of the outcome here. So we have 7 secret decks unlocked now. We skip through this, and we've gotten a now dark magician thing. It seems like it skipped maybe a special animation I could have seen otherwise as far as getting the new items. We have a ridiculous amount of new secret packs, but I imagine I have already opened a pack on each of these. And then as far as cards collected, I will have had 30 times 8 new cards. One of the solo story I did was very odd in its animation style, almost like they brought in a different animator. It looked much more like an anime artwork, in the sense that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has this fairly inconsistent style in its artwork over the years, but it's usually somewhat similar in that there is an object or a person in the middle, and then there's a background that is not that important or emphasized. Whereas the card art I was saying had like a anime girl telling about her dream to her brother over breakfast. So you see the background wall of their house, and there's a table with food on it, and there's two people in it, and then you can see a thought bubble of what she's talking about in her dream. It's just like very detailed and busy as a image, whereas if you're getting something fairly old like this, you have a monster and generic action lines in the background, or you have something more modern, monster with generic action lines in the background. You sometimes get slightly different art styles where it's a little bit more zoomed in, a little bit more detailed. Certainly thematically you get a bunch of weird characters where it looks like they've just rolled some dice and said, let's do robot and insect and merge those two together. Or you sometimes get a humanoid character, but often they come off more as like elfish or angel-like. There's considerably high numbers of non-humanoid characters. Here is a very different art style for a humanoid type character. And when you get like these shiny versions of cards, the shininess seems to play directly against what you would want to see, because I can not really make out this character very much as it's glowing. Yep. Just a massive amount of cards. See, this is another card that's a little too detailed, a little too modern, kawaii moe animation style compared to these older cards, older looking cards. I don't know when these cards actually were made. Like airplanes coming out of nowhere is thematically weird too. At a certain point it is fairly obvious that they would have had to move with the times and improve or change their art style from what would have been decades earlier animations, and that would have been more in line with what was being animated back in the day, to more moe kawaii cute looking animation styles. If anything, I think they probably should be somewhat applauded in the fact that the art styles have stayed close enough to each other, because this really could have gotten very wild and out there. It could have been entirely different art styles done, like Magic the Gathering has done variant art styles of their cards that are totally different. The My Little Pony special cards, for instance, is a great example of that, where those variants, A, were way too expensive so you'd never actually play them, and B, if you did play them, they would stand out like a sore thumb compared to the fantasy Dungeons and Dragons art styles of your average Magic the Gathering card. This is just too many cards in general to look at. 30 packs sounds like a lot. Here you have a kind of great example of what a 90s anime lady would look like, in that they've gone out of their way to make the character look particularly tall and long and stretched out limbs. That did not last for very long. Didn't even really last for like male characters like that one for very long. I imagine Yu-Gi-Oh! Probably stood firm on that art style a lot longer. Yeah. Even if you are showing me hundreds and hundreds of cards here, like, feels like hundreds and hundreds of cards, none of them are jumping out to me because all I'm doing is looking at the pictures of them, not reading the description. I just would never have time to read the description of all these cards to start to think about, well, is there an effect or strategy or synergy? I've given up any sovereign thought, as it were, as far as making a deck. There's a incredibly different art style, and just weird in that they're in like 80s workout leotards. Yeah, there's just so many cards. I would never spend the time to look at them all, and that's something that real world card collectors and card game players probably would do, is that they would go through their collection of far fewer cards because they would actually be buying packs in the real world, not for actual money, and at that point the cards would become much more precious and that you would go over them and look at them. Back when I was playing Magic the Gathering in the real world many years ago, that's definitely what I did. The Dragon Maid art style definitely stood out. Again, just unlike most cards, lots of characters and a detailed background on top of half dragon, half maid anime characters. But in a digital version of a card game, which, let's face it, all future generations are going to at least spend half of their time playing digital versions of collectible card games going forward, it doesn't make any sense that you wouldn't. Once you're playing a digital version of a game, that opens the door to get a lot more cards and devalues each individual card. As far as new cards, seems like we got a good percentage of new cards as I scroll down here. Got a lot of duplicates too. And then a lot of new of these. As far as numbered owned, yep, a lot of extra cards. I imagine under the normal categories, I seriously doubt I will have even 4 copies of more than 1 or 2 super rare or ultra rare. Which, yeah, that is another thing that they could have fixed in their anniversary update for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duels. Just combine all the crafting dust together so that... Alright, so you can't purchase that again. We've got a bunch of extra stuff. Let's see, let's go over to the packs. Got all these secret packs that are new. And yeah, we don't have any gems to really spend on any of this, but we could definitely show off which ones would have been good candidates to potentially open 10 packs on if we did have 1,000 points. Let's see, if we look at like cards included in the pack, and it's all of these. Then we go to your cards. And we just scroll down here. It's probably not the best way to highlight that, is it? Because you'd have to just scroll down and try and get a percentage of everything you own. Yeah, that's not the best way to do that. There's a better way. Featured cards here. Yep, this would still have been a good candidate. But in 23 hours, I definitely am not going to have an extra 1,000 crystals for any of this. And there's no way you would have gotten around this. Like, you would have had to have had 6,000 to 10,000 gems plus before you even purchased that anniversary event to then be able to afford buying 10 packs for each of these secret packs. And at a certain level, it doesn't matter if the secret packs go away. They really shouldn't go away. They should just be unlocked forever. That is certainly something they could have done for the anniversary too, is just as soon as you unlock a secret pack, it is always available for purchase. There's no reason to put a time limit on it. Like, you're not motivating a lot of people to purchase more cards in 23 hours versus just giving the opportunity to purchase more cards when you have the crystals to do it. This would be a very bad candidate. Yeah, we just opened up a bunch of these. I'm not even going to bother to go through the rest of these. Suffice it to say, it's not going to say anything different, just to say there are ones here that would be better candidates than others. Even if I found one that specifically had never been purchased and I don't have a single copy of any of those cards, I couldn't really do anything with that. At best, I could maybe buy one pack for 100, which is a losing argument, to buy myself another 24 hours and try and time it out that way. And yeah, we're not going to get too much gems for those levels. All right. Edit deck. And then number owned, all cards including forbidden, and then this button I think is necessary. So it's like way easier to scroll down to this point to get a general idea of how many cards we are at. It doesn't give you a real number per se, but you look at this bar to this point and you can get a general percentage and see that we are approaching a 1/3 or 3/4 of all cards. We have at least one copy of those cards. And then if I was to spend a lot of the crafting points for rare in normals, I could probably get at least one copy of each of these cards. I don't know if that changes much of anything or increases the odds of getting super rares or ultra rares, but it is something that eventually, if I had extra time, I should do. When am I going to get that extra time, though? It seems like at no point. It's been a year playing this game. I've never had extra time to come in here and try and craft massive amounts of things. There isn't a button here to say generate cards not owned that aren't in this deck. So the way you would have to do this is you'd have to build a deck of cards not owned, then you can batch generate cards without not owned. If we dismantle all of our extra cards from opening 30 packs, you can see we'll get another 360 crafting points for normals, 290 crafting points for rares, and then 40 crafting points for super rares, and not a single crafting point for ultra rares. Yeah. So there's still a lot of work to be done if you want to own all the cards, and then there would be a lot of work if you did own the cards to make a new meta deck. Noticeably, I don't think they've really added any new cards, but this Spirits or Sprites of the Miracle may have actually added some new cards, and maybe that is the new meta deck to focus on, because I did see some YouTuber talking about these cards. But I don't know if these cards are even out yet. Yeah. April 9th. It's February now, so are they coming out in April 9th or are they going away in April 9th? Yeah. We may be at the point where these sprites of Miracle are changing the meta, and I need to build a new deck. But I just don't want to spend the time on it. Alright, so video game news now. Let's just focus solely on that, and we'll try and wrap up fairly quickly, even though we have a ton of news to still go through. 2K insists Jake Sullivan departs on good terms after a disappointing Midnight Suns launch. If, quote, we have deep appreciation for his work and we can't wait to see what he does next. This is basically the same article, but they've taken the update to write a new article, which I won't complain about that, really. It makes a lot of sense that if you get an update to write a new article instead of just putting an update / addendum to the old article. Midnight Suns, I think, inherently was always going to kind of fail because the characters are just in unfamiliar outfits, and they did not sell the game well as telling you what it really was. So while they did promote Midnight Suns quite a bit, I did not know until it had already launched, and days after it had already launched, that it was an XCOM turn-based strategy game. Like, I had no idea what it was, and I definitely wasn't hyped around it. There's also some weird competition, certainly between Marvel Snap and Midnight Suns. The name doesn't even have Marvel in it, which is kind of a problem. There probably needed to be a Deadpool-like character who would have been your companion or been the face of the game, or Wolverine, even. But it didn't really feel like that. They had a main character to focus on, or a main plot, or main story to focus on. And then our last Video Games Chronicle article says Tencent has reportedly scrapped plans to launch its own VR hardware, but the company has denied claims that it's disbanding its extended reality business unit. Yeah, I could see a lot of companies secretly working on VR hardware and then giving up on that. Particularly when you see like what the PlayStation VR 2 can do. If your hardware that you were working on was considerably worse than that, then you may simply not be able to compete. Alright, well then we're going to move into the Gematsu articles. Homestead Arcana launches in April. New gameplay trailer is released. Homestead Arcana being half magic, half farming simulator, with a very different trailer here compared to what the actual game looks like. Like a Dragon Ishin DLC skin Dragon of Dojima trailer is available if you want to check that out. Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 details more characters, game world 1 year later. Fuga Melodies of Steel, I believe, is the game where you're in this giant ever-moving tank and you're fighting at war in this giant crawling tank. Although that's not what these screenshots are really showing. And it definitely is focusing on these cat people characters. I would have to go back and figure out, let's see, if Fuga Melody of Steel 1 was, how well that was received, and if it is potentially a game that would interest me. Let's see. A lot of DLC as far as just costume packs. Yep. Melodies of Steel 1 here. Got that plugin enabled. I need to disable it. I keep opening new tabs otherwise. There we go. Yep. You're living in this tank that's always moving, and you're fighting This may be the one where you actually sacrifice some of your characters as shells for your giant tank and just like use up their souls to power the tank if you're in a really desperate situation. And if you do that, they die permanently. It seems like you only have 12 kids. Anyways, so yeah. With the announcement of the sequel, now would be a good time if somebody was going to give this game to me, if they wanted to see me cover it. I would have a hard time justify spending my own money on it, because you've got the furry aspect of the cat characters, which I don't even know if you really would want to call this furries as much as just anthropomorphic cutesy cat characters, and the relationship aspects and the RPG like aspects. Yeah, it seems to me like it's probably closer to an RPG game than you would really think. Moving on, Dokapon Kingdom Connect details its online play. This is, from what I recall, something like a Mario Party clone. It seems like it's probably unlikely this would come to the West. It would need a different title and an explanation of who the characters are, and then you still are competing against potentially Mario Party type gameplay without Mario Party type characters. A turn-based battle game called No Marina has been announced for consoles and smartphones. This does not look particularly interesting. Inine's Perfect Welt Anastasis launches February 21st in Japan. Sounds like a German title, and looks like it is a fighting game of some sort, but honestly does not look particularly well animated or that interesting. I wonder if this is a low tier indie fighting game series. Seems almost like it's an arcade game. Yeah, it's an arcade only game. For an arcade only game, why does it look so bad? The graphics could look a lot better than that. Moving on, Ghost Ship Games has launched a publishing label called Ghost Ship Publishing. First title to be announced on March 2nd. This always seems like a weird situation when you see a game developer, in this case the developer of Deep Rock Galactic, announcing a publishing line, changing their focus. It's been acquired by Embracer Group, so it really doesn't make a lot of sense that Embracer Group would let yet another company get the label of a publisher. I can't help but wonder if Embracer Group is either being run at random or by some major like money manipulating conspiracy, in that they're making fall guys by having subsidiary publishing companies that will never make the money back, and that at some point Embracer Group will just collapse like THQ did and go bankrupt, and then there'll just be a new THQ called a different name. It definitely seems like Embracer Group is more focused on internal announcements and internal business than they are actually releasing and publishing games. That being said, Embracer Group has said that they have somewhere around, I think it was 200 games in development, and we'll get to that story later today. A massive amount of games in development, but so far THQ Nordic and Embracer Group, very few games released and very few of them good. You have a remaster of a SpongeBob game, you have Darksiders 3, which wasn't that great, you have the Darksiders spin-off, and then there's another SpongeBob game, and I think that may be literally the only games worth mentioning. Moving on, Ninja Jaja Maru, The Lost RPG, launches February 21st. This looks like an RPG game. Let's hit play and see if we can get a general idea of what it looks like. Yep, looks like a very old NES 8-bit collection of games. Ninja Jaja Maru, not a series I'm familiar with. The Famitsu sales have been updated for the 6th to the 12th. With this, Hogwarts Legacy for the PlayStation 5 has made the top slot, beating out handedly Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Nintendo Switch in total taking up the next spots all the way down to a PlayStation 5 Gran Turismo 7 in the 9th spots. So imagine if you combined all the sales here, you probably would either approach or beat the 67,000 units sold as a new launch. But you can see also the numbers jump down fairly quickly. Basically, if people were buying video games in Japan today, this week it was, for Hogwarts Legacy and nothing else, Nintendo not trying to really counter-program against it or compete with it. Gran Turismo probably just a afterthought if you have a PlayStation 5 to get it on top of Hogwarts Legacy. Harry Potter, almost certainly incredibly popular still in Japan. I bet none of the Twitter drama around J.K. Rowling has made its way to Japanese people. I wouldn't be surprised if most of them haven't even heard about it. Overall, if you're looking at position placement, the Nintendo Switch still has a much wider variety of games that are selling well, whereas the PlayStation 5 is getting small smatterings, and there's just no PlayStation 4 version selling at all. Hardware-wise, now that the PlayStation 5 is available, it seems like the PlayStation 5 might be slowly catching up, but it would take them, let's see, 50 weeks, a full year of selling 80,000 units to catch up to the current number of sales of the Switch OLED model alone. Now it'd get nowhere close to the lifetime total of the Switch original version. And that would also assume that the OLED model on the Switch just stopped selling completely. Xbox Series S seemingly more available still, and so we're getting fairly big numbers of that, beating the PlayStation 4. But yeah, if Sony was going to win the sales here, Sony would have to have some first party titles in this list and just a lot more titles in general. Let's see, Alice Gear Aegis CS Concerto of Simulacrax launches March 16th in the West. This was always the weirdly, little poorly soft-celled CG animated game that never looked good. Yet it has managed to put out a decent amount of press releases regardless of that. So I have to kind of applaud that. And maybe there is just a niche fandom that really loves the Alice Gear Aegis series despite its kind of low effort animation. And I'm just not aware of that fandom. Disney Dreamlight Valley, a Festival of Friendship, update is now available. Okay. Yep. So, I've got some screenshots here. I think so far they really haven't shown a Disney guy as a playable character very often. It definitely probably is a target market of more Disney girls or Disney women, but it does seem like you can play as guys. You still can't play as kids though, which seems weird. And there seems to not really be a consistency as far as who the characters are they are picking to show off, because here you have a screenshot of a dark-skinned lady generated avatar. Here you have more of a Asian, perhaps inspired lady. Moving on, MLB The Show 23 features detailed game sizzle trailer. Check that out if you're interested. I imagine if you want to play a baseball game, you probably do want it to be hyper realistic if you had a choice. But I also imagine at a certain point you are wasting pixels and wasting animation effort if you go too much more hyper realistic. Almost certainly you wouldn't get to the point where they're doing face scanning and hiring like celebrities to be voice actors, or hiring the professional baseball players to scan their faces and put them in games. They're probably doing a little bit of that, but not at the highest level of detail that you could, because I imagine you have diminishing returns and you don't probably gain too many new people wanting to play baseball games. I still probably would be more enticed to play an arcadey baseball game than a realistic baseball game, because I would hope that would speed up the process of playing the baseball aspect, because baseball itself in the real world is an incredibly slow game. I even heard something about a new rule that they've added where they're going to put a runner on second base when they are in overtime in baseball to increase the odds of somebody making a run home and finishing the game, to reduce the amount of times baseball games have gone into extra innings on top of extra innings on top of extra innings. Moving on, Marion Bayou, The Road Home for Switch launches March 9th. It's currently available for PC. This is yet another game where I just don't think I've ever seen it. Doesn't have a lot of reviews. It definitely seems like from the screenshots it could be something I would have easily overlooked. There's not that many screenshots, and doesn't seem like it even has a video. No, it does have videos, whether or not they play. So yeah, I'll put that on the fall list and see if it gets more reviews. That being said, it did come out in July of 2022, so it may just not be that relevant, and it is only coming to Switch via an eShop download, which may not make it any more relevant. Moving on, Like a Dragon Ishin Combat demo is now available for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. The food-focused action roguelike Cruise in the Air for PC is going to be published by Exceed Games and Marvelous Europe due out this summer. Is this the food game I'm thinking of? No, I believe this is a completely different food game. There is a lot of different food games that get made, and yet not a lot of them are good or worth playing. Cyberpunk isometric shooter Slavic Punk Old Timer has been announced for PC. It's due out in 2023. We might be hitting a point now where we're going to start getting more announcements. Yeah. At a certain point, an isometric top-down twin-stick shooter game, which I guess technically wouldn't be top-down at that point, with high action, might work, might not. I would guess I would just have to leave it at that. Miasma Chronicles 17 minutes of pre-alpha gameplay is available. I'm not sure I've heard of this game Miasma Chronicles before, and pre-alpha doesn't mean anything. Pre-release alpha doesn't mean anything. Like, all alphas would be pre-release. I guess technically you could release an alpha, but I really wouldn't call that a release in a general video game terminology. This looks like an XCOM-like game with just a slightly different style to it. And as far as I can tell, I don't think I've seen this game before. And honestly, I don't think I've seen this game even now. Because, yeah, 17 minutes of pre-alpha gameplay doesn't mean anything. Tetris Effect Connected update to add new modes alongside the PS5, PSVR 2 launch. And again, Gamatsu is using, just like Video Games Chronicle, they're using a screenshot like this, which just implies to me the new mode is to play old school Tetris. Or at least play something that looks like old school Tetris. There was a game called Tetris Effect and then Tetris Effect Connected. It was kind of like a addendum updated version of Tetris Effect, if I recall correctly. Slime Rancher 2 Early Access Song of the Sabers update is now available, which I don't think I'd want to play Slime Rancher 2 until it was a finalized product, and I still haven't gotten around to playing Slime Rancher 1. Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Familiar Myth Battle Chronicle game overview trailer is available. This is a smartphone game. I imagine you will have a certain fandom play it, but I'm not sure that this anime is even airing still, so it's very possibly late to the party. It could be that some of these smartphone spin-off games are based on mangas that are still continuing, so there could be fandoms of people reading the manga that got that 1 or 2 seasons of an anime but then continued the story in the manga. And a spin-off game may appeal to that kind of audience. As you can see here, the actual gameplay is just kind of an action beat-em up experience, and they are heavily focusing on showing off the harem of characters that he adds to his party, I imagine, although I don't recognize most of these characters. I don't think I actually watched the anime all the way through. I am still muddling through Netflix and Naruto. And boy, has it really just turned it into filler arcs. And even when they throw out an episode that looks like it's going to move the story forward, it really is just another filler episode. Yeah, Viz Media actually added like Sailor Moon and Death Note and things like that. Several shows free with ads to their YouTube channel. So like they at a certain point, I imagine, have just given up the idea of putting people towards something like Crunchyroll to watch it or Hulu to watch it. It's free with ads, but then they're getting ad revenue, which is fine. Fair enough. Of course, there's still probably better, like commercial-free, ad-free versions of Death Note on YouTube. And you really have to go to the playlist tab of Viz Media to find a playlist for that specific show to find the videos, so they're not promoting it very well. I wouldn't be surprised if Hulu and or Crunchyroll both kind of get rid of a bunch of their content, not just anime, but just content in general, and that changes things up, and you start to see things either on new platforms or streaming on YouTube or other platforms like that. Somebody on the chat in what looks like Japanese says hi, so I'll say hi back, even though I can't translate or what's being said. They did type hi in English. let's see. Moving on, Gamatsu says the Horizon Call of the Mountain launch trailer is available to see if you want to check that out. Call of the Mountain, I think, can only be played on the PlayStation VR 2. So, yeah, I don't think it's really going to be a story. Well, apparently you can also play it on the PlayStation 5. Can you? The way it's being advertised says it can only be played on the VR2. And this was the question that certainly was going to confuse me as far as the tags of PlayStation VR2, is that there kind of needs to be a box around these or a plus sign between these two, because you have to have a PS5 and a PSVR2 to play anything that's a PSVR2 game. But this implies you could play it without the PSVR2 and just play it on the PS5, and I don't believe that's the case in this instance. Moving on, Atelier Ryza 3 Alchemist of the End and the Secret Key goes gold, so they are ready to go into production with the version of the game they have. Doesn't inherently mean the game will be completely bug-free. Hopefully it's mostly bug-free. But they no longer are going to be working on that 1.0 release that would be on the disc, and now they are either going to work on bug fixes or not work on bug fixes and work on something else like DLC or a different game. There is a real question in my mind as far as the Atelier Ryza series potentially getting received well, and then them not really having anything new to replace it with, or it not being received well, and then the Atelier Ryza series going a little dormant, which I doubt it would, because they really have churned out a lot of Atelier games. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a new Atelier series with a new set of characters outside of the Ryza trilogy, and it just does not capture the hearts and minds as much as this character did, because that really was lightning in the bottle. Genshin Impact version 3.5 update Windbloom's Breath launches March 1st. There is also a story we will get to where one of the voice actors has been accused, and Genshin Impact is going to recast the voice actor of that character and no longer associate themselves with that character. We'll cover that story when we get to it. The next mainline Sid Meier's Civilization game is in development at Heather Hazen is in development as Heather Hazen is now named a new studio head. Steve Martin and Jake Solomon leave the studio after more than 2 decades. So somebody new comes in and they announce a new game in development, which is potentially to say she may very well say the game is now in development, because I say it's in development and they haven't even had their first meeting to make a game in development. Although that's kind of a great way to become the new person in charge, to say, we've got a new project, I'm greenlighting this new project, I'm starting something new. Because usually what happens is when somebody comes in, they cancel all the old projects, and then they take a long amount of time to announce anything new. It is probably much more preferable to start on a positive note instead. Let's see. Bleak Faith Forsaken launches March 10th, which this is a game I guess I just haven't seen anything about. It looks like a Dark Souls type game, although it may not be anywhere as polished as a Dark Souls type game. It's very dark and black. That's for PC. Die and try again in this unforgiving action RPG, so yeah, I would say it probably is a Dark Souls type game. Bindi and the Dark Revival for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, and Xbox One launches March 1st. It's currently available on PC. The Bindi series has always been a little weird looking. as a kind of scary looking game, but also not quite feeling like it is just a standard horror game. Here you have what look like either duct taped or taped down people, maybe fake robots. Maybe they're not taped down, maybe they're being covered in some kind of black goo. It does seem like there's some black goo going on here. Yeah, I'm still not really sure what the Bendy series is. If anything, it kind of feels like it is a successful version on some of those horror internet meme games, internet meme stories, like Slender Man, where the Slender Man game was constrained, I think, by its find the 5 pages gameplay concept that was part of the internet meme. Bendy may be a wholly original concept. In a lot of ways, it's probably just Mickey Mouse. This is Mickey Mouse if you don't have the rights to Mickey Mouse. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because here you have like a Donald Duck and a Goofy and a Donald Duck type character. And if anything, it kind of feels like it's almost a BioShock game. Interesting. Well, this is on my wish list. The thing I'd like to know, though, is Bendy and the Ink Machine Complete Edition, I guess, is the other game. So, Boris in the Dark Survival, I somehow already own. Apparently, because it's free. So this first version of the game looks a little rougher around the edges. Not that much, though. This is another example. They're calling it a puzzle action horror game. Let's see if the new Dark Revival is a puzzle action horror game. Let's see. No, by the tags, it seems like they've dropped the puzzle aspect and gone more action. So a slight difference in gameplay style. Yeah, this is yet another example of a series that clearly I'm not watching the right kind of content creators, because they're not touching on these games, probably because it's a scary game, but I'm just not hearing people talk about it, and I am just missing games more and more. And honestly, I wish I could be that kind of content creator who could play a lot more games and cover a lot more games, because I should be the change I want to see, and should have been the person in 2017 to play the original Bendy game, and should have been the person on November 15th to have played Dark Revival, or at least known it existed. And I guess my YouTube shorts are trying to do some of that, but I'm not really succeeding as far as being able to play new games and talk about new games. And I'm not hearing other people who are playing new games or talking about new games. I probably should be checking something like Twitch every day for the new games and new streamers, but I just don't have the energy and time to do it. Yep. Who would have guessed that being your own boss and being a YouTuber still somehow manages to create a situation where you never have time to do the things you want to do? Moving on, For the King 2 Resistance trailer and screenshots are available. This is a PC game. It doesn't look particularly interesting to me. We'll just leave it at that. Valheim for the Xbox Series and Xbox One launches in-game preview on March 14th. It's currently in early access on PC. I guess it's been a pretty good situation in which we haven't seen a lot of early access games released on consoles, but the fact that you could do that at all is still a disappointment. It really should be more of a case that you cannot put a game on a console in particular unless it's a finished product. Punch Club 2 Fast Forward has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This is a fighting management game. It looks pretty good for what it is. Unfortunately, it is, in my mind, definitely compared to things that it is not, which is Punch-Out in particular. And that you would want more of a strategy game where you actually are doing the boxing instead of a game where you're just managing boxers. And the subtitle Fast Forward is an interesting choice. It implies to me that Punch Club 1 was too slow and they're admitting that it was too slow. So now you can fast forward. A game called Bare Butt Boxing for PC launches in early access on May 4th. Which, yeah, looks to me like it's probably a party game more than an actual boxing game. Yeah, it's a party player versus player game. So it immediately loses my attention. A game called De-Exit Eternal Matters launches this spring. This might be a puzzle game of some sort. I'm not sure if it's particularly a great puzzle game. With this pixely voxel art style, I'm not sure that's something I'd ever really want to play. This looks pretty awful. And then, this is shocking. Bill and Ted's Excellent Retro Collection for the PS5, PS4, and Switch is now available, and the PC version is not yet released, but apparently coming. Now, the weirdness here is if this is just a retro collection of old Bill and Ted games, I don't know if any of the old Bill and Ted games were actually good. Bill and Ted's Video Game Adventure, an NES-based game, and Bill and Ted's A Bogus Journey, which I think maybe was even a Game Boy game, but let's just be generous and assume it's a Super NES or NES game. They definitely are using a screenshot here, leaning into the first two Bill and Ted's movie and forgetting completely about the third Bill and Ted movie, Face the Music, which I didn't think that was awful. I didn't think it was amazingly great either, but I don't think the first two movies are actually that great either. They never made a game as far as I saw around Face the Music. Otherwise, I would have thought you would have included that. Yeah. Yeah, the second game is Bill and Ted's Excellent Game Boy Adventure, A Bogus Journey. Yeah, the second game was a Game Boy game. So this is a very rough collection as far as what you're actually playing, an NES game and a Game Boy game. I don't know if Bill and Ted as a series could have ever been any more popular, though. Its premise is too broad in the first movie. Like, you would have potentially, after the first movie, needed to try to make a TV show around it, and I'm not sure if they ever did. And then if you had a TV show where they were going to a different time frame every episode or every couple episodes, maybe then you could stretch it out to build enough fandom. Much like how the Ghostbusters cartoon certainly stretched out Ghostbusters, the movies, enough to build a longer term fandom around it, and Ghostbuster toys from the cartoons built more of a fandom, certainly. But yeah, just two movies, then a massive pause, and no new Bill and Ted content, and then Face the Music decades later is not really enough to make a long-running series or really justify spin-off video games. I hope we don't start to see a pattern of video games, licensed video games, trying to be resold once again. I mean, at a certain level, yes, it probably is nice that you could potentially buy an old licensed game on Steam and that you wouldn't just have to go and try and find a ROM somewhere. But on the other hand, we don't need Steam flooded with a bunch of terrible LJN style licensed games available. I guess the compromise there is if they keep them in collections, it's probably fine. It's probably fine if you do flood Steam with a bunch of old licensed games. It's kind of impossible to make an argument that old abandonware games should stay abandonware just so people can then justify torrenting the ROMs instead of just buying the re-releases. Alright, so now we're going through all of our games. Let's just make sure the blur works. All the games that came out on Steam. It's Friday, so we probably will see at least a couple of adult games. But I wouldn't expect too many. Drifting with Maxwell the Cat. I'm going to give this a chance, although it does look like it's Ugandan Knuckles joke game. Yeah. I'll give that a chance. Tournament. I don't think there's enough visual polish for whatever this game is for me. Beef jerky. I'm gonna say no to this. Hot 21. Looks like an adult game. Let's scroll down here and see if there's an adult content. A mature content warning. No. Interesting. So everything tells me that this isn't an adult game, but everything visually says this would be at least a lewd game. We did see a strip poker adult game on Wednesday. So it would kind of make sense that you might take that concept and just go lewd and have these CGI 3D models, which is what I would describe these characters are, probably asset flipped, and have them play, I guess, strip blackjack or strip 21, which I think blackjack and 21 are usually the same thing, but there might be technically a small difference. And what's stupid about this is clearly this is asset flip. Clearly this is just trying to get you to pay $1.79 for a bad version of 21. But it's not like there's a major competitor as far as 21 otherwise on Steam that I've seen. I'd still have to lean into playing something like Tabletop Simulator if I wanted to play 21. And if I was so inclined, I wouldn't be super upset with playing a game like this and having lewd ladies that you're playing with in some kind of strip 21 outfit scenario. It's very similar to like the Telltale Games poker concept, where if you just want to play Texas Hold'em, you probably could play Tabletop Simulator, but you probably wouldn't be terrible to play Telltale Games poker and have all of the weird animated characters talking to you and telling you stories and getting more of a narrative experience. But yeah, I'll say no to Hot 21. Arthas the game looks a little too asset flipped, or maybe just a little under polished. Take your pick as why I would say no to that. Avery VR Broken Memories, I'm going to say no to because this guy is flooding Steam with these airy games. Age of Conflict War Simulator. Not enough visual polish to it. Magic and Legend, Time Knights. Looks like a Game Boy game. Yeah, these kind of Game Boy games I will, just going forward, start to make YouTube shorts around. Even though they're not my style. Thesis here. Kind of feels like it's an asset flipped 3D model game. Although, once again, doesn't seem like it's actually an adult game. Have we hit a point where Steam and Valve are saying no to adult games, so all the low effort developers are now turning adult game concept into non-adult game things? Alcohol, slavery, partial nudity, and sexual material. One of the things about that Louisiana law in Texas, I think what I heard, I could be totally wrong about this, is that it would only apply to websites that had 85% of their material as adult material, which may very well just create a scenario where you have a website like Pornhub where 100% of its material is adult material, and then they just include a website like Reddit or Google as a different frame, and in that concept, here we have an adult game, they lower their percentage of adult material on it. Although I guess if you include Google, then there would be no way to know how much is adult material. You would have to include something like Wikipedia and then say, well, Wikipedia has 10,000 pages, so as long as we have less than 85% of that additional 10,000 pages as adult content, we can still run our website. And that there would just be a weird click up here at the top banner to do Wikipedia searches, and then click here to get to the adult section. And I could see people dancing around the rules multiple ways like this. Hentai Secret is a low effort asset flipped game of a lot of weird variety. There's a flat anime girl slide puzzle, there's 3D hentai anime girl with a gun running around. It seems like they've not only tried to merge two completely different concepts together, they seem to have tried to merge 3 or 4 completely different concepts together. And I would have to lean towards saying I heavily suspect that this early access game, for no reason, is not licensing this material and they're just stealing it off the internet. But if you are interested in it, it's $1.19. It's English only. It says it has full audio. But yeah, definitely looks low quality. Next we have a game called Bake Burrow, which maybe this is supposed to be a typing game, but I don't think it really is a typing game because I'm seeing just WASD, so just kind of like looks like it's a way too zoomed in and poorly drawn characters, or weird characters to say the least. It really just seems way too zoomed in, more than anything. So I'm going to say no to it. Then we have a creepy looking game called Birth, which, yep, I'll give that a chance. Then we have a horror game, it looks like, called Freedom, which looks like it's suffering from some dark screenshot syndrome and nothing particularly interesting from what I can see. Aircraft Infinity is a shoot 'em up game of no quality. Bluefish Yokohama is a voxel sushi restaurant thing. I think pretty much at this point in Japan, the track sushi restaurants are going away and never coming back just because of COVID and germ dangers of germs. There was always a high danger of just food being on a track going by a lot of people who could cough or touch food. And it, frankly, is more of a gimmick than anything that's that useful as a way of delivering food. Monsters of Seabrook. Should I give this a chance? I'll be generous and give that a chance. Monsters of Seabrook again. Just close that one. Nightcat's Leaves of the Road Collector's Edition from Big Fish Games is another hidden object game. We may be getting back into the groove of seeing a Big Fish game released every week. This looks like this is a tower defense game of some sort. I'm going to say no to it. The Lone Alien. I'm going to give this a YouTube short, but I think I can say no to it overall and not put a follow on it. If anything, my standards are getting lower and lower for shorts and higher for everything else. So next we have an adult game here called Horny Warp Hentai Fantasy, which I really wouldn't call this a Japanese anime style. As far as these characters, there's a nun, there's a green nymph character, there's a mini game in which you're forging weapons. There's a witch character, there's a couple harpy angel like characters. It looks like to me though it is mostly visual novel. It says it's visual novel with village building elements, but they're not showing any real screenshots of the village building elements. The game is $5.59, and it says it supports English, Russian, and Chinese as the languages. It does seem like there's some mini games as far as the village building, but they are rhythm games and quick time event games, I think, really, and that's about it. And so it seems like you would only really get this game if you're interested in the art, and I don't think the art is particularly that good. It definitely has that Russian animation style to it. Yep. This is kind of one of those kinds of games you would expect from like Nutaku, in that it might have a minimum amount of adult content in it and then a lot of busy work or a side game that doesn't really matter. But yeah, so far we have yet to see a standard 3D realistic animation style adult game, but we have seen a couple of attempts at 2D adult games, although even at that I would say we haven't really seen a well animated, more anime kawaii moe art style or Japanese art styles. This is the League Tile Maker game. I'm going to give a chance to. Very possibly it's nothing. Like, we saw a Turkish game earlier, and now we're seeing what looks like an Arabic game. This may literally just be painting patterns though. Weekend in Puzzleberg. Looks to me like it's probably just an RPG Maker game. Yeah, this does not pique my interest. $17.99. Ridiculously expensive for what it's showing. Fear of the Dark. Looks like it's probably a dark screenshot horror game. You can see it's already mixed reviewed, so I'll say no to that. Cyber Heroes Arena DX. I imagine I'm gonna say no to this. Like, I don't know how any game that would be like single player and then have a random collection of monsters and enemies that you're either fighting as or fighting against. Like, it feels like one of those cartoons that would have gotten just 4 or 5 episodes before it got canceled. Something trying to sell toys that never made it to the shelf. So, June Shining. Yeah, there might be something to this. Trying to move through all the new games that came out on Steam as quickly as possible, and since I went late, went long playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm now going along on the news. Bubble Sweeper I think we can say no to. Last Hike. Suppose it's worth mentioning that turns out the mod for realistic genitalia that was accidentally added to the Witcher 3 patch was because they added a mod and credited and I think actually paid the mod maker of a different mod, and that different mod had added the other mod, so it potentially wasn't really as much their fault, other than the fact that they didn't do their due diligence and research to make sure that the person they were compensating and paying to add a mod to the game to improve just the general graphics of characters wasn't actually stealing other mods or using other mods without permission or without accreditation. It's very possible that the other mod did a credit and then the credit just didn't get passed down. Emotions Social Me Die. This looks very weird. And some of this art might be kind of interesting as like a card battler, but having it be on a cell phone and then having all this weird color, it's like almost LSD style art that you would have seen in the 70s. Just lots of colors and rainbows and warped imagery. But then it does kind of seem like it's all over the place. I'm a little surprised we don't see more games like this where you might have an artist who has a pretty decent portfolio or series of animations that they'd like to show off, and then they're trying to show it off by making a weird game around it. But yeah, the actual game here doesn't look that good. It's free and it's English and Italian, so I guess check it out if you're interested, but I don't think I'd even bother to put this on the ball list because it just doesn't have enough polish to it. Although, at a certain point, if I'm not making a YouTube short and I'm not putting it on the fall list, am I really highlighting the game at this point, since I'm highlighting every other game with the YouTube shorts? At least, maybe a game like that does deserve a short. The end is Nahal, if you may say so. This might be something. Plumpy Uprising. We're in a funny situation, it feels like, with adult content. It does feel like all of a sudden I am seeing less adult content than I was last year. But more consistently, I am seeing adult content come out. Where in the past, I was seeing big bundles of adult games every 2 weeks. Now I'm starting to see adult games throughout most days of the week, but in very small numbers. 1 or 2 games over the course of 2 or 3 days. And there isn't a particular indication that the quality isn't improving on any of these. I'm going to give this one a chance, although there isn't much of it. There's another adult game. I would like to see adult games potentially hit a level of quality where they became undeniably good and no longer became as much of a second-class citizen compared to the vast majority of the mature-rated games that get released and that are full of violence and and that's acceptable. We have a game called The Exile of Aphrodisia, which technically is in the adult section, but honestly feels more like it is just a strategy game with very little adult content in it as far as the screenshots are going, and just a lot of text. So much so that I don't think there's really anything here that needs to particularly be hidden. It's English only, and seems to me like the stories are the most extreme part of it. So yeah, as far as what you're actually doing, it seems to be mostly reading text, but there is obviously some interface here, and the art is kind of all over the place. But yeah, definitely doesn't seem like there's a lot of animation here. It would be fairly hard to be drawing things in this flat 2D animation style and show enough adult content to entertain people looking for an adult game. But this is kind of exactly what you also would want, is a game that is willing to go into the adult content without just immediately becoming so enwrapped in the adult content that it's not trying to do anything else. They're saying this is inspired by the Oregon Trail and the Odyssey, and I actively believe them that this is very much a narrative experience. Let's see. Next we have a more traditional kawaii anime style. Manga Makers Mega Milkers. So you have an anime lady with giant breasts being focused on. I assume she's a mangaka, as they're called, just a manga artist or manga writer. Usually they do both. And yeah, there's just a few screenshots of her having sex or engaging in some sexual activity or being nude. Let's see. It looks to me like it is a pure visual novel with no other gameplay mechanics. They're selling it for $9.59, which, again, if we're ever going to get to respectable porn, whatever that really means, the prices probably should go up. It has full Japanese audio and supports English and Chinese and Spain Spanish and Latin America Spanish, traditional and simplified Chinese. Let's see. It says it has hours of story content in it, 14 scenes in it. Let's see. Mature content is BDSM, bondage, sexual accessories, and impact play. Pregnant characters. Which, yeah. Milkers does potentially lean towards the idea of lactation and pregnant characters. Yep, feels like a very traditional adult game. Not something still that is to a level of quality that I'd need to put it on the wish list, but definitely at least a couple steps above the quality of most of the other games we've seen today in the adult section. There is clearly just a passion in animation in general amongst Japanese game developers, and that passion does obviously copy over to when they do want to make an adult video game. And in particular, maybe it's a self-selecting bias, but when you see a game that supports Japanese voice acting, that's a higher level of quality, and it does imply to me that the game is actually being made by a mostly Japanese team for a mostly Japanese audience. This game is just weird looking. Is this an adult game? Well, this is an adult game with a patch, and they're actually selling the patch, which is interesting because usually the patch is completely free. So this is kind of a great example of what I was normally seeing before I started looking, had flipped this option on Steam to look at games in the adult section. Is you'd see a game like this that's being sold outside of the adult section, thus it's going to get a lot more views, and then there would be an 18 plus patch. And arguably, this is worse animation than the Mega Milkers game. It seems like it's less story, and it really seems like you're being probably bait and switched more than anything to play the game for free and then pay $2.99. So by default, I would assume you have to just assume that this is a $2.99 game. Noticeably, in this case, Japanese isn't even above the fold as far as languages, and it doesn't have voice acting. So, yeah. Then you have like these characters. These two characters that they're talking about, and I don't know what they mean by CV here because I'm not seeing any voice acting at all. So maybe that means their names. Let's see. I severely suspect this game is not worth it, even if you did play it for free and then get the adult patch. Ideally, this would be how most visual novels go, though, is that they would be for sale with a free adult patch, I would say, instead of for free, with then only being potentially worth it if you do buy the adult patch. But I also would like to see better quality here. Arguably, it is also extremely weird that Steam works in such a way that the creators, and let's face it, it is the creators, this game was released today, are able to pick tags like sexual content and nudity and not by default then be put in the adult section, where they really should be in the adult section. Like, it's better for the store's health overall to have an adult section. Barnes and Nobles or bookstores, if back when bookstores were relevant, would have never been able to make the argument that they should be putting the porn mags right next to the Bibles or in the exact same sections as integrating it into the same areas, or even something more simplistic as saying, well, there are depictions of sexual acts in the Bible, therefore that should be in the adult section. That wouldn't work either. Like, sections make sense in any storefront, particularly when you're trying to prevent, say, the kids section of a storefront like Steam from mixing with the adult section. And there is weirdly no real kids section on Steam either, and that's another issue. So there really should be a lockdown steam.kids or kids.steam.com that is just games that have been hand selected by Valve for kids, just like Lego games, things they know are from major producers that have been ESRB rated for E for Everyone or G. Yeah. Moving on, we have a game called The Last Haven. I'll give this a chance. And then the last game that came out today is Sorry We're Open. Which I'll make a short on, but I don't think I'll bother to put on the fall list. So now we're at the GameDeveloper.com articles. Ubisoft credits long-lasting live games for a third quarter success. Things are looking up for Ubisoft in the third quarter, which is great. But they did also just like cancel 3 or 4 games that were in production, and We haven't heard anything about Beyond Good and Evil 2 ever getting developed any further. And what they mean by long-lasting live games at this point probably are just Assassin's Creed Origins and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I don't know what other long-lasting live games they have. We already talked about the new studio Wildlight Entertainment, formed by a AAA game veterans. It's really unfair because I imagine every week there's somebody who forms a new video game company that doesn't have a celebrity as part of that formation of a company, and they definitely don't get the same press coverage. Like, if I tomorrow wanted to form a video game company, I could certainly send out press releases and try to attract the Associated Press and try to send out press releases directly to news sources like Kotaku, Bloomberg, Giant Bomb, and GameDeveloper.com, Gamatsu, Video Games Chronicle. I could send out releases to all those companies and probably find a mass list I could spam a press release to. But I bet none of them would actually cover it unless they could find something really interesting to say around it. Here's that story I talked about earlier. Hoyoverse is going to recast the Genshin Impact role after the voice actor allegations. Again, this is probably one of those cases where innocent until proven guilty just isn't getting applied fairly. Going forward, Hoyoverse will recast the English voice actor for Tai Neri in Genshin Impact and re-record the character's previous lines. Who is the English voice actor? This wouldn't be the last time that this wouldn't be the first time an English voice actor was accused of doing something inappropriate. Apparently the actor is Elliot Gindi. I haven't heard anything about this. Let's see. He faced allegations of sexual misconduct with the game's fans. One of his Twitch moderators published a 21-page Google document showing sexual exchanges with his fans, many underage, through channels such as Instagram and Discord. Yeah. So this definitely comes up quite often, that you become a minor celebrity and then fans start talking to you, and many of them are underage, and you probably should just not be talking to underage people at all, or talking to your fans at all. This has been a long-running thing. You go back to Elvis, basically marrying an underage character, and I think several other famous celebrities in trouble with doing that. I mean, you can go back as far as Muhammad marrying a 13-year-old. It seems to happen quite a bit. And I don't know how you really fix this other than people need to realize that this is not a smart move to engage in any way. It is, I suppose, possible that all 21 pages of this document is forged and it's all like misconstrued and all inaccurate, but yeah, when you have a 21-page dossier around you, that looks bad. They're saying he's in breach of contract, which potentially means they had a morals clause, which surprisingly most video game companies for voice actors don't have morals clauses. Following day on February 8th, Gindi himself confirmed that some of the allegations were true, so much, I guess, for denying it. Or arguably, you probably are better just denying always. But yeah, by confirming it's true, that gives definitely Hoyoverse more of a reason to no longer employ the person. Yep. It really is a nightmare situation, the way the internet and these cancel movements go, and the companies don't want the bad press, and people don't want the bad press. Now, inherently, if you haven't done anything wrong, you can deny completely false allegations to some level, but that's about it. Apparently, even the voice director for the game, at least the English voice director, called for his firing. So nobody is really supporting him. And I imagine he's not particularly a major character if he only voiced one character anyways. But yeah, every couple of weeks we get some kind of allegation or drama. We already talked about the story. Sega increasing the average monthly salary of workers by 30%. They're using Supersonic as a screenshot for that, which is, well, funny, perhaps not the most informative image you could have used. A chart around average pay at Sega or average pay in Japan would be much more informative than just a Sonic picture. And I don't know if this is for clickbait reasons or what. Do you choose Sonic? The Saudi Wealth Fund, I assume this is the public investment fund, yes, has increased its stakes in EA and Take-Two Interactive, so they definitely are just pushing more and more money into video games. Now, I'd have to do a little research here, but there is talk of Ukraine in their fight against Russia taking back Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula. If they could liberate / conquer Crimea, whatever they did, get it out of the hands of Russia, then potentially the oil that is going through pipelines in Crimea or that is going through shipping containers in Crimea, I'm not sure which one it is, if not both, might be in the hands of a friendlier nation, and that might very well affect Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is aligned with Russia, and I don't know if any of this is true. I'm just making a completely speculation-based thought here. But it might be that Saudi Arabia sees the writing on the wall, that either they're going to run out of oil, which I don't think they really would, but they might, or they're going to run out of being able to get the oil out of the ground and delivered to people and sold. Like, even at the moment, if the Russian oil that has been cut off to Europe is not being sold and it's coming from Saudi Arabia, then Saudi Arabia is making less money on oil. And it does make a lot of sense for your own country to diversify your country and not just have your major and almost sole source of income be from one resource such as oil. Now, arguably, countries are going to have to at some point have their valuation come from something other than natural resources. We cannot just constantly mine the planet and give value to people who have rare earth minerals or oil and ignore more cultural or social values that other countries that are not natural resources rich might have. That's why I suspect that at some point it would make a lot of sense for countries to give each other a level of credit based on just their friendliness and the stability of their country and the lack of conflict their country is causing. And so each country would be allowed to just like print more of their own currency and hand it out amongst its citizens just by being a peace-loving, stable country. Basically bribes for peace. Because peace in itself is a very valuable resource that we've failed to put a value on. Let's see. But yeah, the other slippery slope argument definitely comes back as you see Saudi Arabia gaining more influence by owning more countries or owning more companies. more parts of companies. Let's see. We already talked about this. Fire Access veterans Jake Solomon and Steve Martin depart the studio after Midnight Sun's not doing as well. Like, even this screenshot is just a great example of the poor promotion of Midnight Suns, in that you just have all these gold and black laid characters and none of them look that interesting. Like, you have this Wolverine and Iron Man and you're just not even really paying attention to it. I couldn't even tell you who these two characters are. I really don't know who this character is. You have a Captain America here. Yeah. I'm not really sure otherwise. Like, this is Death Rider or yeah, I don't even remember the name of him. And I should totally be able to know the name of the Flaming Skull character in the Marvel Universe. It doesn't feel very comic booky in particular. Like, comic books are all about bright color palettes, red, green, blue, not just gold and black. And it is just also a great example of, this does not show you what the actual game looks like and the gameplay looks like. Moving on, the UK Regulatory Board issues new game-focused data protection request. The ICO suggestion for game developers aim to keep a large number of young players in the UK safe by the Information Commission Office has released a new set of recommendations. What are the actual recommendations? No. Suggestions like verifying a player is legitimately 18 years older. Checkpoints and prompts encourage kids to take a break. Developers to have behavioral profiling used for marketing off by default. That's a funny way to phrase it, but okay. I thought behavior profiling was going to mean something completely different, as in suggestions such as you have to monitor how they're playing, and if they're being aggressive or saying something mean, you kick them from your game. Should a child choose to opt out to ads, the developer must implement measures to control and monitor product placement, advertising, and sponsorships. It's not a terrible idea to say, the suggestion here is if you opt out for ads, you should actually opt them out from ads. Let's see. Discourage the use of techniques that would persuade young players to make poor privacy-related decisions, such as encouraging them to make social media accounts to receive in-game rewards. Probably a good idea. I don't know what social media account you would really want your kids to start at this point. They'll do it. They'll make a TikTok and things like that, but like, you need a Google account and probably a Gmail once you get on the internet, but I don't know if you really need a Twitter account or a Facebook account or anything like that, or a TikTok account. Definitely not some of these like Snapchat things, or what was the one that makes the pictures disappear? It was mostly just for sexting. So yeah, it looks like they have a list of suggestions, but they are only suggestions. And so you definitely know the likes of like Ubisoft here are probably not going to heed those suggestions particularly well. Particularly if there's just no teeth in them. And I don't know if losing UK sales is enough to force a lot of game companies to implement those suggestions if they were mandatory. Now, Frogwares has delayed the Sherlock Holmes games after Russian attack on the Ukraine. Frogwares is based in Ukraine. That being said, there has been a lot of allegations against frogwares in the past, and allegations from frogwares to other people in the past, and it's questionable whether or not there's just some shadiness in frogwares in itself, and it's created this negativity around the Sherlock Holmes games that really shouldn't be there, on top of the fact that most Sherlock Holmes games have been pretty bad in the first place. The most recent one, Sherlock Holmes The Awakened, being delayed possibly for the second time. In all fairness, even if there wasn't drama around frogwares, I don't know what they could have done. Like, your country's being attacked, you can't just all of a sudden ship all of your employees to some place safe. You can try, certainly, and do your best, but wherever they go, they're probably not going to be as well established and as capable of continuing development on a video game. And I imagine none of them are particularly 100% focused on video game development. Okay. Let's do some follow list cleanup, and then we should be close to the end. I like the art style on this, but it is a visual novel game. But it is relevant enough in that it has over 30 reviews and it's mostly positive. So I'm going to add this one to the wish list. This one, on the other hand, has no reviews, so it has to leave the fall list and be abandoned. Chronicles of the Deep doesn't have any reviews either. There are better versions of an underwater exploration game anyways, although this one is apparently a first-person shooter underwater game, so like arguably there aren't better versions than that as far as like submarine combat. This one I'll give more time to, but it is well on its way to making it to the wish list. If anything, I very possibly am building up a scenario here where the games are getting delayed because of the use of the fall list, and then me going through the fall list throughout the year. And so games, potentially, I could just say, well, this has 28 positive reviews, so that's close enough to 30. I should put it on the wish list. Although inherently it doesn't really matter, because if I am delaying games making it to the wish list, it's only yet another delay at that point as to whenever I would actually buy the game and play the game. The thing I'm not running into here, I think I'm going to say no to this game. It just looks too generic, is not having enough time to make games. And I've said that multiple times today, which is repetitive. Not enough energy, not enough time. If anything, not enough energy. Not awake enough hours in the day. And the only thing that would really fix that would be to Choice of Life Middle Ages 1. Let's see if this is on the fall list. It is. I'm going to put the first one on the wish list first. Choice of Life Middle Ages 2. Then I'll put that on the wish list too. One of them I think starts with a T, T-H-E, and the other starts with C. Yeah. Man, it really would be nice if I could just make a clone of myself, or remove my sleep, as it were, and not have to sleep at all. I guess that's why so many people get addicted to stimulants like Adderall and cocaine, is that they're constantly trying to accomplish more or sleep less. Of course, that never really works out well. Chinese characters. I'm gonna give this some more time. Elimination puzzle game. Chinatown Detective Agency. It's mostly positive, so we'll put that on the wish list. I guess I should just make sure these aren't early access games. And then Chill Panda. Probably should remove this from the fall list, but I'll give it more time. Just because there might be a slight chance that that's a interesting kids game, although I don't know how many kids games I'm even going to try to cover going forward. Okay, so that was the fall list cleanup. I only have 9 new tweets since we started 3 hours and 30 minutes ago, probably in part because I started so incredibly late. These late night streams sometimes get some new people watching, but very often they seem like they don't do much of anything. So yeah, scrolling down through 9 new tweets is easy. There's no new news. So yep, I'll try to get more stuff done over the weekend. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and give me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.